Hi there, welcome. Another live session. How are you all tonight? Well, it's tonight for me, but I guess it's not tonight for probably most of you. So we'll just wait. If you're watching this recorded, according to this, there's no one watching yet. So we'll just wait till there's a couple of people before I start too much. But I'm wanting to think tonight about questions of the artistic journey, questions about the artistic journey, issues that come up on the artistic journey, troubles that we have, or highlights, encouragements, or simply how we speed our way along our own artistic journey. How does my artistic journey compare to someone else's? Are there any rules or tips or whatever? So if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask me about my reflections on the artistic journey, then please type them into the chat now. And if you're one of the 5 people that my screen tells me is watching at the moment, then now's your chance to ask me something and to have a better chance of my answering it. In fact, I'd love to have a question come up right now about some aspect of the artistic journey. And it could be something that possibly is more personal reflection of my own experience, or it may be something that's more generalized, more to do with the learning process as well, something that's more readily applicable to everyone. So some thoughts, some questions about the drawing journey. I have a few comments that I can make, that I can start with, but I'm still just hoping that a question is going to pop up on the chat now, and I hoping that you can hear me. We did have that trouble a few weeks ago. If you can hear me, I'd just love to have someone say, yes, we can hear you. That would be great as well. Um, so yeah, can someone say we can hear you? And then I can start. Um, I think one of the things that for me has been most exciting about my artistic journey is that it really started so relatively late in my life in many ways. The passion was always there, the interest was already always there, the drive was always there, but for lots of reasons, I was 50 before I really started to do art as an adult, and yet that, you know, if you'd asked me when I was 20, I would have thought that it wasn't worth doing at that stage. Great, thanks, Joseph. I wouldn't have thought that leaving it that long was going to be a helpful thing or a useful thing or a satisfying thing, or maybe even that if I didn't have anything to do when I was younger, it meant that there really wasn't anything there. Sometimes it's just not the right time. It's just not the right season. Sometimes we're busy with other responsibilities, and sometimes we've got issues within ourselves that we need to sort through. Art is such a personal thing, and for some of us, we connect with our artistic expression in a really intense way, and it because I think it can be an expression sometimes of our deepest places, or at least very deep places. There's an awful lot invested in it, in how it looks, to us, in how it looks to other people. All of that can be overwhelming. And because visual art is something that is visual, I mean, it's something that people look at, that they have to see, that can be very intimidating as well. And yet, for most of us, doing art that no one sees would also be a problem. So what is it? What is it that we're really trying to achieve in what we do? And if we have a long period where we aren't, or we haven't, or we don't think we will be able to produce art, is that a real problem? And I would say no. I mean, I didn't realize that I would be getting finally into art as much as I did when I was 50, and certainly in the 15 years since then. Um, I had no idea that I would, but what I have realized was that thinking about it for the whatever 30 years in between was incredibly useful, was incredibly helpful, that I was actually still on the journey, even though I wasn't actually actually producing much at all. Only incidental. Um, a few people asked me to do this and that, more like little graphic design things than probably art, and I used to enjoy those, but I really didn't have, I really wasn't producing artworks in my mind, and yet all the thinking I did, the sitting in traffic, looking at the big tree canopies by the side of the motorway, and wondering how you would paint the effect of light on the gum leaves on the canopies, all of that really bore fruit. So I'd say that if this is a season in life where it's just not working to produce art, either from external reasons, just life's very busy, or internal inter, internal reasons, it's there are just issues that have to be dealt with. That the thought of it when you go to do it is too threatening, then that's okay. Uh, but continue to think about it. Continue to dream of what you would do, and continue to look at art that inspires you in the sort of genre that you'd be interested in. And I did do those things, and I was amazed at how much they fast tracked me. It was like I'd been doing some drawing consistently or some painting consistently in that time. I was learning without realizing I was learning. Not as much as if I'd been actually putting something in my hand and putting it on a canvas or on paper, but it was still a productive use of the time. They weren't lost years. I think that's what I'm trying to say. They weren't lost years. We have a question. Cannot get motivated. Any suggestions how to get started? Um, yeah, the question is it not motivated, or is it kind of blocked by being afraid of producing art? And there are lots of reasons why we're afraid to do the very thing that we want to do, um, because we don't have to do it. No matter how talented I am, I don't have to produce anything. There are other things I can do with my time, other worthwhile things. Art's not necessarily more valuable than lots of other things any one of us can do. So we choose to do it for certain reasons, and for most of us, those reasons are important to us, and that's why we do it. Definitely being afraid. Okay, well that's that's different again. Um, that's not so much lack of motivation as lack of confidence, or not being able to move through that. So the question is, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? And it's usually to do with failure of some sort. And so it may be really nothing to do about art per se, but it might be to do more with how I feel about myself, or other experiences I've had in life that I feel like I can't cope with another failure. But whenever I've been afraid of something, I've always tried to work out exactly what am I afraid of, because fear is one of those things that a whole lot of fears can get kind of tangled up together, and we're feeling one, or we're looking at one, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that just magnifies it. It becomes like a magnifying glass. So the question is, what am I afraid of, and how can I reduce that fear? How can I reduce whatever it is that's blocking me, stopping me going ahead? Because I do think fear is one of those things that we often just stay back from and never really see what it is. And often it's just a big bluff. It's, and it's actually not as terrible as we think. And if I'm afraid of not being as good as I hope to be, want to be, well, what does that matter? Why am I thinking I have to be good for it to be worthwhile, to be valuable, to be something I should do? If I have high standards, I probably almost certainly won't be as good as I'd like to be. But we all start somewhere. How do I stop myself from comparing my work with others, even though I know, okay, I have a lot to learn? How do you stop yourself from comparing yourself with others, even though you know you have a lot to learn? I would say, Sahana, don't be afraid of comparing yourself to others, not in the sense of who's better, but how can I learn? I mean, I would say, look at the work of artists who inspire you, who paint similar subjects with a similar medium, and say, okay, why do I like this person's work so much? What's in it that I would love to bring into my work? See, it's not about saying someone's better and I'm worse. It's about exploring the possibilities of art. It's about exploring the possibilities of the medium that I'm using. And so I don't think there's any need to. The only problem is if I compare myself with someone else and say I'm no good, I should give up. This is a waste of time. That's a toxic thing, and we really shouldn't be buying into that, because it's just not true. I mean, we are all um, yeah, our worth is not based on our output, on our produce, in any capacity. Um, and so that's that's an issue. I have to disconnect. I mean, I'm not a better or worse person because my drawing does or doesn't work out. Um, because it's the other way too. I mean, what you're saying is if you feel less worthwhile because the drawing hasn't turned out, then are you somehow thinking that you'll feel more worthwhile if it does? Because you're not any more or less worthwhile. Um, you've simply been able to at a later stage or at another stage produce a better drawing. It doesn't make you a better person. Um, we possibly, the older we get, we often come across very talented people who aren't always better people for their talent. So we really have to disconnect scoring who we are as people from our artworks. I think that's a really important thing. Um, yeah. Have I ever painted with an airbrush? No, never, never. I'm very low tech. Um, yeah, yeah. So I wouldn't know where to start. Um, in fact, I think of airbrush painting still as a teenager in the 70s, where airbrushing Duco on cars and producing very dramatic um, graphics on the sides of cars, particularly panel vans, we called them. I'm not sure what you call them in the rest of the world. First thing I started drawing. Well, the first thing I started when I came back to art it, was in 2018. So I painted. I came back to art at 50, having had 30 years in the wilderness, um, and I painted for uh, I don't know, 10 years. And it was in 2018 on an overseas trip that I began to draw again. I mean, I'd done drawings as a teenager, um, but and as a kid, mostly copying from cartoons. But it was a trip to Paris in 2018 with our families, with our family, and we were walking back to the Airbnb. It was a 30-degree summer's day, and the sun was setting behind Notre Dame. And my youngest daughter was with me. Well, everyone was there, but she was a fine arts student, and I said to her, "Why don't we just sit? Let the others go back to the place, and why don't we just sit here and draw Notre Dame," which I thought was a lovely thing to do with her, and also a lovely thing. I was wanting to do some drawing and just had not been able to make time for it. And when you're with other people, they don't want to stop and wait while you try and draw. And so we did, and we drew Notre Dame, and that was the start of it for me. If that drawing hadn't turned out, I probably wouldn't be drawing now. I'd either still be painting, or maybe I'd have given it a rest for now. But because the drawing turned out, she posted it on my Instagram account, which just had my paintings on it. And look, it got a very positive reaction, and I felt kind of proud of it, I must admit. And it made me want to do more, because when we do something and it feels good, it's nice to do it again. And so I began to do more drawings, and I posted some of them. And then when I got back to Australia, I wanted to draw some more. So I had to use my photos, which was Sadly, I didn't take the photos knowing I was going to be wanting to draw them, but I still managed to find lots of things, especially from my Paris photos to draw. And I began to draw and paint at the same time. I actually had an exhibition to get ready for, a painting exhibition, so I had to keep painting, but I did a little bit of drawing most days as well. And my Instagram account kind of went crazy. I went from 300 followers to thousands, and then tens of thousands, and then many more than that. So um, that kind of encouraged me too, and then the YouTube journey. So yeah, that's how I started drawing. That one drawing. Yeah. Let me see. How do I choose what it is to draw? Well, look, it's a bit difficult at the moment because I draw now what I think will make a useful video, and so I've got a bit of a different purpose in mind with my drawing now. But before I was making videos with my drawings, I was drawing things that I just loved to look at, things I enjoyed, the the form, the line, the decoration, the light, the shadows, whatever. I mean, not everything I enjoy, I felt able to draw, but I certainly felt that there was no shortage in the architecture field. I've looked at architecture all my life. I almost became an architect when I left school. Um, but yeah, yeah. But I think draw the things you love, and then you will love drawing. And the other advantage of drawing things we love is we've probably already looked at them closely a lot. We've probably already spent a lot of time with careful observation. And I really, as you hear me say all the time, I really do think that the biggest problem with our drawing is we haven't observed carefully enough for before we put the pen on paper, and we think we've seen it, but we've seen part of it, and we have all these memories of what the thing looks like, and yeah, and we don't get it right. We get it approximately right, but it's still not quite right. And it's not because we've lacked the skills in drawing. I think we so often think we lack the ability to somehow, the technical ability, and it's really the observational ability which is the problem. Um, yep. Okay. And look, part of the reason, Lemongrass Cap, that I post the reference photos for you on my channel community page is that it can be hard to find things to draw. I mean, because in a sense we can draw anything, that somehow makes it harder to choose. And I know that often when there's time to draw, we might think, well, I've got half an hour or 40 minutes, but you can spend half that time trying to find something to draw, and then there's not really time to draw. So I'm hoping that by posting all of those photos that were my references for my videos on my channel community page, you can just scroll through there and find things to draw really quickly so that you're not losing half of your drawing time trying to find a reference that's okay to draw. And because they're all my photos, there's no copyright problems. I'm giving you, when I put them there, I'm giving you permission to draw them. So you can have whatever fun with them that you want. Thanks, pre-cyberpunk. Thank you. I'm glad the videos are helpful. Does the subject determine the type of cross-hatching? For example, a leaf versus a tree, truck, or nature buildings. Yes, I think certainly. Not so much the subject, but the surface is probably, I think it's a little bit tighter, narrower. Um, I, I mean, different artists hatch and cross hatch in different ways. I tend to hatch as much as I can. I cross hatch reluctantly. But that's not to say it can't be done really effectively. Um, there are some artists I know some who I follow on Instagram, and a couple of Australians, in fact, who cross hatch and hatch so meticulously, so carefully. It's like an old engraving, and I could just never have the patience to do that. I can admire it, but that's just not in me to do. Um, um, it uh, but I think my general rule of thumb is follow the form of the surface. So because most of my hatching is on walls, then hatching straight lines up and down the walls. With shadows, we can do the hatching lines in the direction the light's coming. I also like to do hatching lines in buildings with the direction of the perspective angles on that surface. Um, because what we want to do with our hatching is to have enough difference in the direction so that different surfaces still look different. There could be several surfaces together that all have hatching, and we don't want them to just blob together as one. A leaf versus a tree trunk. Yep. I mean, well, you got size there with scale, which is another issue. But with a tree trunk, again, it depends how close I am. If I'm further away from a tree trunk, I often do my tree trunk hatching horizontally because I want to kind of capture the roundness, the tubular effect of the trunk or the branch. And often, depending again on the tree, some trees have very rough bark and some trees are very smooth and they're almost like polished metal. Certainly in Australia, that's the case. So it does depend on the texture also of the bark. The rougher the bark and the closer we are to the tree, the more complex the hatching may be to look credible. Um, Exercises to improve observation. Look, the Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain, Biff and Hap. I don't know whether you've read that book. I read it in the 30 years that I wasn't actually drawing, and so again, this is someone gave it to me to read, and it was really interesting and amazing, and made so much sense. And it really focuses on observation, and it's the drawing the picture upside down. So you get a reference and you put it upside down in front of you, and you get a sheet of paper and then you draw it upside down. So without ever turning the reference round the right way or drawing or turning your paper while you're drawing round the right way, you copy at the upside down reference and you draw an upside down drawing. Now, when you've done that, you turn them both round the right way. And the almost guarantee is that you'll be amazed at how well you've drawn that, like how accurate it is. And the reason is that because the objects, and this is most commonly done with portraits, which are really hard to draw because we know what faces look like so well that if it's not quite right, we can tell. So draw an upside down portrait. And what this does is by putting it upside down, it makes it look unfamiliar enough that we can't go, oh, I know what that is, and then start to draw it before we've really looked at it. What happens is we look at it and we think, oh gosh, I better look some more. That's not quite right. How is it upside down? And we pay a lot more attention because it's not familiar. And because we pay so much more attention to it being upside down, it's easier to do. It's easier to draw more accurately because we've got more of the information that we need to get that accuracy in our line work. So I think that's a really good exercise for observation. The other thing I would suggest is that if in your drawing you have problems with proportion, that the proportions of things aren't quite right, some parts are larger than they should be or wider than they should be, then choosing simpler subjects and working on those until the proportions are right is a good thing to do, because proportions really are based on observation. And if we're having trouble with a skill, it's good to wind back to the place for that skill that we can actually achieve it. And one of the biggest problems, I think, is that particularly with self-taught artists and particularly with people using YouTube is we don't have a teacher to kind of say, you're trying to run just a bit too fast. And so you're tackling things that really are going to possibly end up discouraging you, because it's just a bit hard to achieve at this level when you haven't achieved at an earlier level. I mean, toddlers fall down and walk and crawl and fall down before they walk, and there is a kind of a progression. Have I tried to draw backgrounds like clouds with buildings? I'm getting asked so much about clouds lately, and to tell you the truth, I've only ever done one lot of clouds, I think, in one of my Instagram drawings, my big A3 drawings. And the clouds, and I did the clouds for that one because they were really important. It was like a brooding grey Paris, kind of like one of those grey, cloudy Paris afternoons, and the sun was behind the clouds, and it was really I thought, very much a part of that scene. And so I drew the clouds in then. Well, I drew them with the marker, with the tone, and I did sell that one, so someone else liked it. But I don't think clouds are that easy. I mean, I actually think so many people are asking me to do some videos on clouds that I really need to practice doing some clouds. And because the truth is, I've never really been interested in the sky, and it's the focus has been on the architecture. So yeah, I mean, I'm not magic, and I still need to work at things I do and build up a certain skill level, particularly with a subject that I haven't really drawn before. And it's not just learning to observe the cloud, but it's working what marks work well. And a pen isn't the most sympathetic medium to use for clouds. I mean, obviously, pencil graphite is a much more obvious, has much more sympathy with the structure of a cloud. Yeah. Yep. Do I do much figure drawing? No. Um, Only when I have to put figures reluctantly in my street scenes. Look, I've done a little bit over the years. I've occasionally been at art things, and there's been an opportunity for figure drawing, and it's always great to do. But I do very, very little of it, really. How many years did it take me to be this incredible? 65. um, yeah, well, as I said, my drawing journey really is quite short. I mean, I haven't been drawing for decades, which people often think, but I am a full-time artist at this point in my life. So um, but my actual drawing in this season started in July 2018. And before that, for 10 years, I painted. And for for 4 of those 10 years, I painted full time. So, yeah. And otherwise, it's going back 30 years to my youth when I did those things. But again, I often talk about how if we go deep in a certain genre and medium, then we learn skills going deep that seem to apply when we go to other areas. Tree canopies. When I'm drawing architect with pencils and pen, suddenly I'm aware that all these things that I learned when I was doing these are helping me when I'm drawing the Musée du Louvre with a pen. It's hard to believe, but it's true. So yeah. But I haven't been drawing as long as people think, but I've been developing the skills that I use when I draw for a long time before that. And I think the other advantage I have is that having been a trained teacher, even though not for art, it was English and history, and even though I only taught for 3 years in the early 80s, I know how to learn. I know I have some skill in understanding the learning process, and so I've been able to apply that to myself and use that myself in this area. So yeah. What I do for a living? Well, I do this. I mean, fortunately, I'm at the stage of life where I don't have a lot of debts, and so I can earn less money than. Oh, look, some people are about to get ads shortly, so please don't skip them. Please let them run out if you do, because that's a way you can help me, and I really appreciate it. Thanks. Um, yeah, so this is what I do, and I have a very sympathetic wife who supports me in doing this, and yeah, um, and look, I've started to make some money from YouTube now as well, which has been great. Um, my favorite thing to draw. Look, I guess I have to say architecture. I just love drawing architecture, and I love drawing the big, grand neoclassical buildings from like the 1880s to the 1910s. Um, that sort of, particularly the ones that dot European and some South American capital cities. I really enjoy drawing those, all those columns and domes and things, pediments and statues. I just really enjoy drawing those. Um, but I'm particularly have enjoyed drawing a lot more nature lately, um, because of some of the videos I've been doing. I've been drawing a lot more trees and uh, yeah, that stump I drew the other day, and drawing things like gravel and grass and the most mundane things, but they're important in drawings that we do in scenes. So yeah, I certainly do those as well. So I have been enjoying that and just getting more practice with using a pen. I mean, I had drawn nature before with a pencil, but before I was doing these videos, but it's been, yeah, nice to explore ink and line, and not kind of and hatching. It's been drawing trees because I do love trees. Drawing trees has been incredibly helpful for developing my hatching skills, I think, because we really create the effect of the tree canopies mostly through hatch lines. Trees really push us to draw a good tree. Trees really push us to vary our marks and to be very focused on the marks that we use, and not to just draw lines. We need to think. We need to think that we're making marks when we draw. We're not drawing lines. Some of our marks are lines, but we need a much wider repertoire of things we can do with a pen on the paper to draw the things that we're going to want to draw. So I think that's important. Hi, Lucas, in Brazil. Yeah, you're in winter too, but I suspect it's warmer in Brazil. Thanks for that. Yeah. Let me see. Elaborate decorations. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that was great. Juiced Gooth. Yeah, yeah. So if you've got people just coming on, if you'd have any questions you'd like to ask me about the drawing journey, the drawing experience, um, that's that's great. Um, uh, yeah, look, I think probably if you ask me what's perhaps my most characteristic drawing technique, I think it is my emphasis on drawing the effective detail. And I've just been surprised to, as I think about it more and as I'm more focused on it. I mean, I suppose I've always used it, but I used it fairly intuitively at first. But now I've um, become more aware of how much I use it and how I use it, and particularly now drawing more nature. I was always aware of it with trees, but yeah, I've become aware that when we do the ground, we use it too. When we draw buildings, well, I guess I did all those Pelagonia drawings for Instagram. So certainly when there's a lot of architectural detail that's overwhelming. Anytime there's overwhelming detail, we need to start drawing the effect of the detail. And yeah, I'm really glad that a lot of people have found it's resonated with them. Do I listen to music while drawing? Yes. Well, not always, because sometimes I'm talking when I'm drawing, and I can't listen to music. But I do listen to music if I'm not doing voiceovers at the time. I listen to a lot of worship music while I draw. And but sometimes you've got to be careful with music, because sometimes I find you can kind of drift off into the music and not be focused enough because a really common danger is that we draw too many lines when we're getting towards the end of either a whole drawing or possibly just the end of a particular part. And particularly as if it's a scene where we need to leave lots of light, white, empty spaces, and we're trying to create a random effect. I find that if I switch off my brain and just drift, particularly if I'm drifting with music, I find I end up all those nice um, gaps that I've left randomly, I tend to just slowly fill them all in until suddenly it's almost like I've got a geometric pattern instead of a lovely random scattering of whatever it is I'm drawing. So I find that's something I need to be careful about. Summer in Sweden, that sounds nicely, and all that's probably still, it's probably a bit like winter in Australia, I would guess. And hello, Carol from East Jerusalem. Great that you could join us again. The biggest barrier um, I've I've overcome becoming a pro artist. Oh, look, I don't think of myself as a pro artist, but I do feel comfortable using the term artist. But basically, I think artist is a term that anyone can use if they're happy to use it about themselves. It is really so subjective. It doesn't say something so much about the quality of our art as how I view myself and what's important to me. Um, so I think we can all call ourselves artists if we feel we are artists, because that's where it comes from. It's not because I got more than 35 out of 50 for my drawing. The biggest barriers I had to overcome, though, was probably the perfectionism stuff. Was that I don't want to try because I don't know, I may not be as good as I want to be or think I should be, or as people, as a kid, I got a reputation for being artistic, and then I felt I couldn't do it. And if I did something, people would realize that I wasn't really. And by the time I finished school, I did almost no drawing because I don't know, I just felt all this pressure that I had to somehow show I was artistic, and I looked at stuff other people did and thought, that's better than what I could do. And I don't want them to know that. And I managed to, I don't know how, get away with stuff. And yeah, and then just did very little while I was at uni, when nobody was around, and then I just left it behind. And so, coming back from that, and what got me into doing it was, and some of you have heard this, but my eldest daughter won a year's scholarship at a very prestigious Sydney, Australia's oldest art school, down at Circular Quay at the Rocks, and with her art leaving certificate kind of school artwork. And I was crazy jealous. I was thrilled for her, so thrilled for her. But part of me was saying, I so wished I could have that opportunity. And that's what gave me it made me realize this is really important. This is really important. And you haven't done it for all these years. And if it's this important to you, then Stephen, you should do something, because no one's stopping you. No one is stopping you doing it. You've stopped yourself, and you're kind of stopping yourself. And if it's that important, then make time or let it go. But don't get all worked up because your daughter's got this opportunity that you wish you had. And so that was the kind of the wake up moment. And I think I realized that if I didn't do something, I could get to 60, 70, 80 and die and have never done it. And that was scary too, because I did always think it was within me. So I think for me, that's how it worked. That's how it got me to push past all the things that had blocked me. And I think maybe too, by that stage of life, I'd worked through some of the personal doubt issues possibly that was such a problem when I was sort of 16, 17, 18. And so maybe those things weren't as severe for me at that point. Can you draw humans and face? Well, I can. I don't draw them as often as I draw other things, so I don't think I draw them as well. because we develop ways of drawing certain things. Um, um, I mean, look, in lots of ways, you use the same techniques and skills to draw a face as a tree, as a car, as a building. So in some ways, if we develop good drawing skills, then we should be able to draw anything really to sort of almost the same extent. But we do get we do get, I think, better at things that we do more consistently. I think because particularly we can learn from our mistakes. So if I draw lots of buildings and I critique them well, and I get to see when they're not quite right, and I work out why they're not quite right, then I can make those adjustments. And if I do, say, lots of portraits and they never look quite right, but I always think, now, why isn't it looking quite right? And that pushes me into a direction for the next one. Then I have a progression of improvement. So I think it is helpful to stay in the one niche, because we learn how to improve when we do that. Yeah, it's Christian music I mostly listen to. Or, I can listen to some like 70s stuff, like stuff that takes me back. There's that too. How could someone get the courage to share his art, especially his art? Um, I think it would be lovely if courage wasn't a word we needed to use, because it wasn't such a big deal. But it is, because somehow it is an expression of ourselves. Look, especially if you, I think, we only learn to do something by doing it. I mean, I think if I want to show people my art, then that's probably a sign that I should be showing people my art. Um, um, and so I need to find some people I can show my art to, or better still, I need to find some people I can draw with, because they're going to understand what I'm going through. They're going to understand the issues that I face when I draw, and they can be support and encouragement. There was a question about how do you cope with drawing in public when people can see, and look, you can stand up against a wall so that people can't get behind you, and that maybe that will work. But I think in the end, we really just need to learn it doesn't matter. And sometimes, like, I don't know, you learn to jump off high places by just jumping off high place. I mean, into water. I mean, because I'm in Australia. To jump off cliffs or high walls or whatever, or walls into water, by doing it. You just got to take the plunge and learn that you come back up and swim to the side, and then you do it again. There are things we just learn by doing it, and I think. But I think doing it overseas was good. Like, I'd be thinking, like, I'm in Paris, I'm in Dublin, I'm in Florence. Like, what do I care who comes up behind me and sees what I've done? But in my experience, um, people are really kind, and people say nice things. And, I mean, I presume that if they didn't like it, they were one of the many who said nothing and just walked on behind me. Um, and said nothing. But sometimes it really adds to the moment. I can still remember some nice conversations with people who liked what I did. As well, it becomes actually part of it's not just a drawing, but it becomes a memory of that place, that location. And so if it's combined with a trip, especially if it's a trip to a special place, then that's even better. And it does mean that if it doesn't work out and people look at it, you're never going to see them again anyway, because you'll all fly back to your own countries. Your darks are too dark. Yeah, well, that can be a problem. Although usually people have the opposite problem. Their middles are too middle. Look, start with your lights, and or start with your middles. I mean, it's hard to say, because I don't know what subjects you're doing and how dark I mean, like if you do lots of light scenes, night scenes, then lots of darks are a good thing. Um, just don't let yourself use the darkest values. Yeah. Um, Sorry, I'm just losing some of the, just pulling back some of the questions. Yeah. Um, the fact that you're aware, you're fairly focused, Pam, I think is helpful. So like if nothing changes, nothing changes. I think that's an incredibly helpful phrase for life. We so often just keep doing the same thing. We're not happy with the results, but we keep doing the same thing and we keep being unhappy with it. So, Pam, I would say you need to say, okay, I need to stop doing it the way I do it because that's always going to make my darks too dark. So, how can I change it? And it may mean that you put your darkest values away and you say, I won't use, I'm going to do my next drawings and not use those at all. Or I'm going to start with the lightest ones and work down. Or I might remove every second value in my spread of values to just create more contrast from light to mid to dark. I mean, you've got to break it up and do it differently somehow. And I think you're probably, and that's not something I can say. So I think that's the solution, Pam, is change the way you do it, change your process in some way. Drew a pic yesterday, didn't think it much at the time, looked at it actually. Yeah. How to be critical or objective in the moment. Look, I think you did well quietly wandering. I find it's more often, I think it looks good when I've done it, and the next morning I go, what was I thinking? It's more the case for me. So that's great. Look, I think probably the next day is a better time to critique how something is. And the question is always, how can I improve it? The question is, what focus does this give me for ways I can see that I could make this drawing more how I want it to be? So, like presumably any inaccuracies. So if the perspective's not right, if the buildings look wobbly or something, but we can get all of that correct and still not be happy. We may not be happy with the way we did the foreground. We may not be happy with our people in the scene. We may not be happy with our clouds. They might look like they're solid and they're going to fall out of the sky. So, yeah, and maybe for you, putting the drawings away for a day and learning just to disconnect from it for a bit, so you're not critical at all, and sleep on it, and then have a look and come to it with perhaps more open mind and perhaps not so intensely kind of focused on what you were trying to achieve and therefore feeling that you didn't achieve it. Hi there, Amy. Hot and dry in Sweden now, 28 degrees. Oh, that's a lovely day, 28 degrees. That's a really nice warm temperature. Did I improve my drawings over time, or did you get others to give you advice? No, look, I really am self-taught. As I said, I think it's been a bigger advantage than I realized, having been a school teacher and having trained as a teacher, and therefore having learned about learning as a skill. And I think it has helped me to grow. I mean, I think I did progress quite quickly once I started, and I think the 10 years of painting set me up for that with the drawing. But what I did notice was that when I started to draw, and I started to draw in pencil because I couldn't see how anyone could draw without the ability to erase mistakes. And I was very focused on mistakes when I was starting to draw. And I've got a much healthier view of making mistakes when I draw, which has enabled me now to draw freehand in ink. But at the start, I was very focused on lines being wrong and having to erase them all the time. But there were lots of things I thought I'd love to draw that, but I never, that's just too hard. I'll never be able to draw that. How do you draw that? I won't be able to draw that. And when I did, I loved the architecture. I loved drawing streets, but I didn't like drawing cars or people. And so I used to try and leave them out. And then, of course, the scenes looked really empty because most of the time, those things are a very important part of a streetscape. And so over time, that kind of forced me to, like, I need to learn to do these. So my first figures were really tiny, really far off in the distance where they were just little black scratches. And then slowly I let the figures come forward a little bit. And I worked out ways that I could draw them that they fitted nicely into the scene. They looked comfortable, like the line work matched the line work, and they're still certainly not a strong point. I mean, I've got people I follow on Instagram who like do cafe scenes, and they just draw the most, Andre from I think Toronto, but just draw the most amazing people and just really capture so much character and movement and the clothing and stuff. And I mean, I'm just playing in the sandpit when it comes to drawing people, but for me, they're not the focus of my drawing, but they're what I call the support acts. And what we want with our support acts is we want them never to attract attention away from the star of the show, which for my case is usually the architecture or the street as a whole. Um, we don't want them to, but we don't want people to be looking at them because they're not good enough compared to the things that we're better at. So, but I did realize that I was learning to draw cars and learning to draw people and to put them in, and I remember thinking, oh, I'll never be able to draw the Musée du Louvre, and then I was, and I was thinking, oh, I love to draw in pen, but I could never do that because I can't erase the mistakes, and I pushed through that and was able to draw in pen. And yeah, do I still draw in pencil? I don't at the moment because my drawing is all connected with making videos at the moment. I mean, the great thing is I draw almost every day now with making videos. But because my YouTube drawings are particularly connected with drawing freehand in ink, now I've been really working on that and developing that and pushing that through some different subjects, so moving out a little more broadly from architecture to some more natural subjects. So I haven't gone back to the drawing. Sometimes I do, but I think I'm part of my reason for moving to ink was we had a big trip planned for 2020 back to Europe, and now I was drawing, and I wanted to. I was hoping to start splashing some watercolor around over the line work, and I thought the ink would go well with watercolor. And I've still got the watercolors. I haven't started doing that yet. So that's something I think I'm going to start pretty soon, because it is always good to, I think, to have areas that we're consolidating and areas that we're kind of exploring and pushing and being stretched in. That's just a really good and healthy learning process. I find that at times I've had a couple of crisis points, and it's when I've kind of bogged down and I'm just really doing the same thing over and over again. And after a few months, I suddenly think it's just not engaging me the way it did, because I've just fallen into a very comfortable pattern of producing the same sort of art, the same sort of subjects. And I think it's good for us to push. Hello there, Wisconsin. Do I find it hard to leave and resist current in? Look, no, I don't find it hard to. Oh dear, there's lots more questions here. I don't find it hard to leave things as black and white, because I do like black and white, and I do like line work. Maybe it was. I mean, I don't do any comic work at all, but I loved reading them when I was a kid. So I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of flashback there that I connect with it. But yeah, making copies of our line work so that we're not having to redraw the line work can really free us up to really experiment. either just with black and white tone or ink washes or with watercolor and color. So it's a great way of both speeding up the process and letting us take risks that perhaps we'd be a bit hesitant um, to take otherwise. But I really do want to get onto the watercolors. In giving our finished drawings fair analysis instead of dismissing the whole thing. I do have a couple of videos on critiquing our work, like how to critique your work. So maybe if you can find that, June, that would be the best thing, because I could remember one or 2 points. I guess I think I have, I don't know, I think I have well over 300 videos now. So I suppose that's why I've been trying to put them in playlists lately. So if you haven't looked at my playlist, have a look at my playlist lists, and that may just help you find something that you're looking for. But um, but I think the most helpful thing with self-critiquing is to work out what isn't working the way I'd like it to work, and take it from there. And then it's always the focus on how can I improve? What do I learn? How does this focus me for my next drawing? And that's why it's so helpful, I think, too. And again, this is another video, but to do experimental line mark making before we actually start to do the drawing. And I do this most of the time for 2 or 3 minutes before I start. It's not a thumbnail. I'm not planning or doing composition. I'm just experimenting with marks to see which marks create the sort of effects I want for different parts of the drawing. And I find that incredibly helpful. And it means that I start my drawings further along, because I've already kind of warmed up and established some things with this kind of mark making experimentation before I start. I should do more to paint how I feel and be less. Look, in a sense, Arnie, you can do whatever you like. I mean, a local artist can suggest, I'm sure in good faith, whatever he wants to suggest, but it's totally up to you or me or them, how we do it. If you want to be really photographic, if that's what's in you, and you want to create that kind of hyper realistic effect, then do it. And when when you want to change from that, then change from that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not higher or lower ground than doing something that's more kind of, I don't know, emotional or whatever. I did all my really, they're not, realistic is probably the best word. Certainly I've never done any sort of photorealism stuff, but my Instagram drawings, I tried to develop a fair amount of realism for the 6 hours that I would spend on them. But now I'm wanting to, because I've sort of switched to freehand ink drawing, I've been really wanting to develop a more gestural style where perhaps there is a little more feeling in my line work, because I don't have a 4x4 grid, or I don't have a pencil under drawing to kind of hang off, and so it pushes you to develop a different way of drawing lines. And I think they've got the potential for more feeling, more emotion. Once we develop enough skill to draw them fairly confidently. In fact, one of my most recent videos is how to draw, put emotion into our line work. So maybe you might like to look up that one. Have I tried drawing? Look, a couple of my Instagram ones are. If you look at my Instagram account and go back about a year and a half, there are some night scenes there. You use a lot of marker tone in those. But it's a great exercise to do once or twice because it's flipping what we normally do. And instead of most of the page being white, most of the page is black or reasonably dark tones. And the white is, depending on how the night scene is lit, the white ends up being a very minor part. It's a really, I think, useful thing to do, just to kind of, yeah, uh, increase our kind of thinking capacity about these things. Do I ever critique viewers' drawings? Look, Biff and Hub, I do, but this is the one thing I charge for. If you're interested in having me critique your work, um, I can do that. I'm happy to do that. If you send me a DM through my Instagram account, which has the same name, Stephen Travers Art, then I can send you the details for that. I do all my Instagram stuff for free. I don't hold anything back in my videos, but I this is how we partly live, is by my art. It's what I do full time. So this is the one thing I do that I make money from, at times. So yep, if you'd like me to critique your drawings, and what I do is I'll explain. Um, I ask you to send me your reference as well as a couple of references plus the drawings that you did from them, and then I look at ways I think you could improve what you've done, and a focus that you can have for future drawings. No, I haven't read Winston Churchill's Painting as a Pastime. I've seen some of his paintings. Which artists do I admire? Um, gosh. I really love the drawings of an Australian artist, Lloyd Rees, who is actually quite famous for his paintings of the kind of 60s and 70s. Very well known artist in Australia. But his drawings that he did in the 50s, particularly in Paris, really inspired me to want to start to draw. He has it's the most amazingly loose gestural style, and gosh, I just saw the time. I've been going on and on for an hour. Goodness, better try and wind this up. But yeah, in terms of drawing artists, I really think of his. And look, there's another artist who I can't tell you his name, but yes, okay. So Juice Goose likes Lloyd Rees as well. Yeah. Um, uh, there's another artist who I took some photos of his work in a gallery, drawing artist of buildings. I think in the Netherlands somewhere. Just phenomenal, just amazing. And he's not someone I'd heard of. I don't think he's someone that most people would have heard of, but just amazing work that really made me want to draw, made me want to stop traveling and start to draw. I could take my own advice and draw the effect of clouds. Yeah, yeah. And look, it really is an aim at the moment, is to draw clouds, to kind of, because so many people have asked how to draw clouds. But as I said, it's not magic. I need to develop a way of interpreting the clouds using black line. And as I said, a black line is not the most sympathetic medium to use to depict a cloud. So I need to practice that a bit. Mention ink with watercolor. What type of ink works best? No, I haven't used inks at all. I don't. A lot of people think I use ink washes with my tone work, but they're Copic sketch markers. So there's a different marker for each value, each darkness level. And I've not tried to do that with watercolor. And the only watercolor that I've really done was before I began doing YouTube, but when I'd been doing quite a few pencil drawings of various Paris buildings, and I got a bunch of them printed with a local printer, and you can see some of them on my website that I do have for sale. But I use some of them as colouring in is not quite the right, but I put watercolor over some of them, and I really enjoyed that. And I sold them all too, or most of them, and yeah, that was a lot of fun, and that worked quite well. But I had too much. I had too much pencil on the paper to do that with my originals, but it worked well on printed copies. Um, Hi, Abby. Yes, we are kind of. What just happened there? We are coming to the end, but it has been a fun time. I'm surprised how late it is. It's Sunday night here, just after 10:30. Where yeah, but any more questions? We can do another couple of questions. That would be fine if anyone, the 24 people who are watching right now have a question about the artistic journey. Now's your chance. Think of something. I can tell you my reflection. Do I have an ambition to do something, a piece of work that I haven't got around to doing yet? Um, I would like to, yeah, look, I would like to develop sort of an urban sketching watercolor ability and style and technique, and be able to combine the line work with color. Would like to do that. It's so different to oil paint, and it's funny because people often think, oh, I'll start with watercolor before I move on to oil paint. The same way people think I'll do with pencil before I do pen. Look, they're all totally different media. Just start with the one you want to do. One doesn't lead into the other. I mean, I had great fun with oils, but the thought of watercolor, it's quite scary. You can't paint over it if you make a mistake. But I got used to doing ink line work, so I'm sure I can get used to watercolor. But I'm certainly happy with the subjects I'm doing at the moment. It's not like I really want to become a portrait artist or anything. Um, I've been drawing since 2018. So my drawing journey has been quite short, but I painted for 10 years before that, 4 of those 10 years full time. So there were lots of skills I learnt doing the painting that I then was able to take into the drawing. Um, do I sell my art online? I have some paintings for sale online that come from before I began doing this, and I have some pencil prints online, but I've just got hundreds of drawings stacked up all over the place. I did have a drawing exhibition, which was great. Um, but I just haven't got organized with my, you know, I'm probably better at drawing than I am at selling. I mean, it's always the problem. It's always the problem for artists is that you can be a good artist, but you're not necessarily a good business person, and you need those skills. And although, mind you, I have run businesses and I ran them successfully, but it's hard to do both at once. Um, it's hard. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I haven't worked as hard at selling things as probably I should have, and maybe I will. Um, no, I'm self-taught in teaching, David. But as I said, self-taught in art. But having been a trained teacher, high school teacher, I have learned about how to learn, and so I understand the learning process, and that's enabled me, I think, to um, probably move through a bit faster as well, because I've been able to kind of plot things to do that. How to how to develop confidence in my drawing. Amy, I just need to keep drawing. Um, it's probably as much to do with being confidence, our confidence in ourselves generally, and I think our art becomes an expression of that. At the very start of this, I talked about a bit about sometimes it's we can be insecure about our art and afraid to produce art because we're afraid it won't be any good, and it's really nothing to do with our art. It's to do with how we see ourselves, and the art is just a way of that coming out. Um, so it depends. And I look, I think I realized at some point that I don't really mind whether people like what I do or not anymore, because that's fine. They don't have to. If they do, that's great. If they don't, it doesn't worry me. But I couldn't have always said that. Certainly back when I was a teenager, that the thought of people not liking what I'd done, well, it put me off doing anything, so that I avoided that. So yeah, sometimes there is just development as a person, rather than as an artist, helps our art. Um, yeah, I'm on Instagram, Stephen Travers Art. Um, my Instagram drawings are different. They're drawn with a 4x4 grid and with a pencil underdrawing, which I then do pencil ink line work, and then I erase the pencil, and then I put marker over it for tone. So yeah, it's a different kind of process, but it was a really good one for lots of ways for me, and I really enjoy the artworks that I did that way. I haven't drawn that way hardly at all since I began doing the YouTube videos. Just one drawing of the Parthenon, in fact, that was a gift for someone, for a Greek lady. So that's the only time I've gone back to that method. But yeah, yeah. So YouTube's the only other one, and Instagram and YouTube. Thanks, YC. Appreciate that. Well, look, thanks everyone for I feel like saying staying up, but most of you it's probably your morning or the middle of the day. But yeah, great that you could join. And look, keep at it. Keep at it. When it becomes hard, ask yourself, why is it hard? Um, yeah, cheers, Bundaberg. Why is it hard? What is the problem? Why am I finding it difficult to sit down and start? Um, um, yeah, my pleasure, Juiced Goose. Um, and and address it, or work out if it's matters or not. Work out if it's worth it stopping you from doing art. Um, I don't know whether I'd care for a knighthood now, but yeah, thank you. That's very kind. Um, yeah, I mean, look, yeah, it's such a great journey, and I feel so privileged to actually have the chance now. Uh, yeah, and even though my drawing journey really is just um, much later in life, um, it's it's brought so much to my life. I mean, I must admit, I don't know how many of you. I've got a video on. It's probably the video. If you sort of ask me what's of all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos, what one are you most pleased that you made? It's my video, something like 5 tips if you start drawing later, for when you start drawing later in life, for people who start to draw later in life. And so it's really kind of pitched at the 50 plus age group. And I just have loved the comments that I've got from those people. It's just so encouraging. People who, like me, thought they were never going to get round to it, or thought it was too late. It's never too late. It's never too late. If we're breathing, it's not too late. And maybe I don't have a lot of time, but I can use a little time. We can do 10-minute draw-ins. In fact, we're better off doing 10-minute draw-ins every day than an hour drawing once a week, in all likelihood, for developing skills. A small amount of time more frequently is a better learning process than that time added up once a week. But yeah, we all need to pace ourselves and work ourselves and work that out. I'm just laughing at Juiced Goose. Some of the names that we have for these accounts really is quite funny. Look, thanks everyone. I'm going to go to bed now. But it's been great that you've joined the live stream, and please, you can help me for the 28 people still here. If you haven't liked this, then please like it. Let me see those thumbs up. Go up by a few more right now, because that does, that the algorithm does pick that up. Comments are helpful for me developing my channel. So please leave comments, and please tell friends who draw, who maybe don't know about my videos, because that is just a nice way you can help me as well. And yeah, that's great. All right. So look, happy drawing, and I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Today's video is not doing too well, so I have to think of a better idea for tomorrow. But have a good day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Whenever you draw, have fun. Bye.